Welcome everyone here today to the NCA live Q&A. This is called Red Pill. It's the Red Pill Q&A of NCA, and I'm pleased to welcome one of our youth members of the National Citizens Alliance, Charles McDermott. Thank you, Charles, for stepping up and sharing your story of how you've gone through all this nonsense with the liberals and the establishment, and now you're with us, and we want to hear your story. Hopefully, it can inspire other Canadian youth out there who may be confused. They may be feeling a bit disconnected from society, disconnected from our country, where it's going. So tonight we're going to shed light on this. But if you're a youth out there, the NCA welcomes you in our party. You guys are our future, and we need you in this party. And tonight it's just testament of how much we value our youth, because we give them a front and center microphone and opportunity to share their views. So enough of my talking. Charles, we want to hear from you. And once again, welcome. You're a brave Canadian, courageous Canadian for stepping up.
Thanks for having me on, Steve. So how I grew up, my parents always taught me, sort of respect democracy. I've voted in every election since I was 18, although when I was younger, I was a lot more nihilistic, and I would still show up, but I would void my ballot. It wasn't until the 2015 election, I ended up working both the provincial and federal election as a DRO. And I voted for Trudeau because I was fed up with the Conservatives. Like, Harper was getting a little bit too big for his britches. And it seemed like, I knew Trudeau was going to be liberal, but I didn't expect to see just how far to the left that he was just going to swing. And, I'll give it our Prime Minister credit for having excellent dance choreography, but I wish that he would focus more on issues that Canadians worry about than PR stunts and so on and so forth. So it just sort of seems like further we go on, the farther away from the original platform that he used to get elected. I remember him being against the pipelines, and now he's using how many billions of dollars of taxpayer money to fund the pipeline. It's just always been a sort of back and forth of so
what about democratic reform? He said when a certain amount of days we're going to have electoral reform.
Yeah, and then
right.
If there's one thing that he's good at, it's stating the current year. Every time that something doesn't fall into the narrative, he always it's 2018. Why aren't we being more progressive? And it's you guys are going so progressive that it's becoming regressive. And that's why, on the internet, there's a term for that, where we're basically the overly progressive left, we're calling regressive left.
So that's how you're seeing it, as regressive, all these policies that are eroding our heritage, our identity, our culture, the mass immigration that we've talked about, right?
Oh, yeah. No, it's a lot of the things with the mass immigration is if we want to bring in 3 million people, I've got no problem with that, but I don't think it should just be mass, open the floodgates, here we go. I think these people need to be vetted. A lot of the crisis that you're seeing over in Europe right now with the mass migration, a lot of these people aren't refugees at this point. They're economic migrants coming up from African states and whatnot, just looking for that quick stamp on the visa to get into the EU. I mean, sure, they're looking for a better life, but there's places in the EU where they're now having to admit that there's no-go zones where the police won't even go. Rape gangs and stuff like that. There's a Syrian refugee family that has joined the community garden in my neighborhood, and they are lovely people. They're so thankful to be here and be in Canada. But I just see, if things in the EU are any indication, then I don't want to see that happen to Canada. So I just think that immigration needs to be controlled to an extent. Like, 3 million people, sure, but it shouldn't just be all at once. Just here you go. And
Well, it's coming. It's coming, Charles. It's actually been going on consistently since the 1990s. That is a fact. It doesn't matter which government's been in power, and it's been growing and growing. And they're going to be pushing up to 400,000 a year.
yeah,
And the Canadian people don't get a say. But we're giving the Canadian people a say by running against these establishment parties.
yeah,
So they are going to have a say in the end. But remember that. And, and I talked to Professor Duchesne with everyone. We're going to have him on June 25th,
yeah.
Charles. And he said, what's going to happen to our country, everyone, what you see going on in Toronto, where Euro Canadians are now a minority in Toronto, if this continues, the whole of Canada is going to be like Toronto. So that's what's coming if this globalist agenda continues. It's quite concerning, isn't it, Charles?
Well, 90. I can't remember the exact statistic, but like 90% of the Canadian population lives within 100 miles of the U.S. border.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, Canada is a big place, but I don't see like all of these migrants moving up to like the Northwest Territories or Nunavut, or like this is all going to impact major city centers across Canada.
Yeah, it's already happening. Look at Montreal, look at Toronto, look at Vancouver, look at Calgary, look at Hamilton, look at Mississauga, look at Halifax, right?
Speaking
On
of
and on.
Halifax, that's actually how I found you guys. If it wasn't for a video that someone posted of a march that you guys did, or you guys had an event and you guys got kicked out of the venue, and then you're dealing with some protesters at that park, and like it was just abhorred me to see this kid pouring a drink on a veteran's head while screaming that he's a white supremacist. Like, it's just sort of, you do realize that this man fought for your right to pour a drink on him and yell at him. Like, it's disgraceful.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
If I had not seen that video, I wouldn't have even known that the NCA existed. Like, this is something that I want to get into with like the media, mainstream media, and manipulation, and like the complete blackout that like you guys have had. It's disturbing. Like, it's just something that like, more and more young people are turning off of like the major news stations. Like, nobody really watches that anymore. Everybody's finding alternative media, stuff like that. A great independent journalist on YouTube is a guy named Tim Pool. He's left-leaning, but like he's very unbiased in his journalism, and it's great to see. Like, then actually, let me post a link of like, where did it go? Unedited Tim Pool. It is a whole bunch of news outlets all saying the exact same thing.
Yeah,
same
unbelievable
speech across the board. And like, when you see this, and they're all talking about like, there's a big problem with fake news, and they're all saying the same canned speech, like, it kind of speaks for itself. Like, there's obviously like manipulation going on.
Yeah, well, I can talk about the Halifax. All the media was saying the same thing, and they all had their little spins in there. Everyone, the whether saying far right, anti-immigrant, or whatever spin. This is always in the media, and they're pushing their globalist agenda. And the reason they're pushing the globalist agenda because a lot of their advertisers are globalist corporations. So they're catering to them. So
take a look at what's going on in like college campuses and stuff like that. There's huge amounts of like cultural Marxism, and I could touch on that. There's a KGB defector, Yuri Bezmenov. Great interview with him. It looks dated, probably from like the 80s. Who defected from the Soviet Union, and he talks about ideological subversion, which is there's 4 stages to it too. And this is like, when you think about mind control and like mind control ultra and the sort of Soviets versus the states and all that crazy stuff, it wasn't, sort of all of this crazy hooking up stuff to your brain. It was, you infiltrate the enemy classrooms and you teach the way, like, so it takes like 3 or 4 generations of pumping your ideology into the heads of these young students. And that's essentially where we find ourselves today. Is there's all of these like liberal arts neo-Marxist like professors that down in Berkeley there was a guy named Eric Clanton. He's if you look him up on Google, look for the Bike Lock Bandit. During the riots down there, he was masked, dressed in black bloc as Antifa does, smashing people with a U-shaped bike lock. Severely injured a guy who was just trying to keep the peace. They ended up tracking him down. He was a professor at one of these colleges teaching ethics.
Wow.
And like,
wow.
So like, and if it was the online image group 4chan who tracked him down, like they pull a lot of pranks. They're the ones that, you know, sort of fooled people into putting their iPhones into the microwave, saying that the microwave would charge it. And there's people foolish enough to do that. They also have fooled news, like they're pranksters, but they also do some good. Like if there's one thing you want to do, never abuse an animal. 4chan will come after you. Like they're, for being pranksters, they do seem to have a certain moral code at times when it comes to some of this stuff. So it's interesting to see the way that that works. Like,
Sure. No, it sounds excellent. And so do you think the Canadian youth are catching on to the media manipulation and the government spins? And
yeah, definitely. Like I see more and more posts from acquaintances and friends on Facebook and stuff like that, where they're posting content like relating to this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just definitely a paradigm shift, I think. There's 2 camps, you know. It's like there's still a lot of these kids that are going to these colleges where it's they are still, you know, very, very far left, and those are the kids that are like getting mixed up with Antifa and disrupting classes and protesting and whatnot. And if I was sending my kid to a university for an education, paying good money, if I was the parent of the kid that was disrupting the classes, I would be pissed off at my kid. And if I was parent of a student that was just trying to get their education and these kids are coming in, I would be absolutely even more furious at like the parents of those other kids and the university. A great example would be Wilfrid Laurier and the whole case with Lindsay Shepherd, who is a teaching assistant there, who showed a short clip from a Jordan Peterson interview on a public broadcasting station. So it's not like this was any sort of hidden material. Anybody could have seen it. But she gets brought into a kangaroo court, like a little Spanish Inquisition, behind closed doors with the professor of the class, another administrator, and what was she called? Adria Jewell, acting manager of gender violence prevention in the Diversity and Equity Office. I'm not sure why we need a diversity and equity office. Like, you know, if this is what their job is to, you know, sort of, and they brought this poor girl to tears. She's actually suing them for over $3 million right now.
wow.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad that she, like, well, she was smart enough that when she got brought into this room, she had her laptop with her and she secretly recorded the entire thing. Full recording is right here. For that one. So that's the full recording of Lindsay Shepherd being interrogated. And then down in the States, there's a professor named Brett Weinstein, who Black Lives Matter really got after, and students got after. They had this whole thing down there where a day of absence where African students could sit out for whatever reason for the day. But here's that sort of like shift in this radicalization of these students and whatnot is they called out for all of the like white students and white professors to stay home that day. And I think Brett Weinstein refuse to do so. And there's a whole clip of these students just screaming at him. And I think he's left that college now too. And to serve any voices of reason are getting driven out of these campuses. And yeah, no, it's the same thing with Jordan B. Peterson. He's another good example for media manipulation. Take a look at a lot of the interviews that he does on mainstream media, and it all just gets this hack job. So, and that's the beauty of the internet, is now we're actually able to find, like, uncut versions of these videos. Like, the media will give you one spin, but you're only a few clicks away from finding out the actual truth. And that's like what I think that everyone needs to do, not just young people, but everyone, is like critical thinking, and like, sort of like take a look at what, is being presented in front of you, and like ask yourself, and like sort of like, I want sources, I want facts, I don't want feelings. Like, I don't want op-eds, I want actual like news, I want actual facts, like not just another slam piece or, hit piece on someone that doesn't fit the narrative. So
No, it sounds excellent. And where do you what do you think is the source of this intolerance in Canada? Because you saw what happened to us in the Maritimes, right? And that's only one example, but you mentioned other examples of intolerance, and I'm getting a lot of it on Twitter now. Like anytime someone challenges the status quo or challenges what's deemed to be the norm, you're completely attacked.
oh yeah, no, they'll
So
try to make you persona non grata. Like, a lot of the tactics that they use are like, speaking out is difficult, because like, I know how these people work. I've seen it happen a dozen times before, where
mhm.
they don't just come after you. They'll start calling your work. They'll try to get you fired. They'll try to ruin your career. They'll harass your extended family. They'll harass your neighbors. Like, it's and I think like one of the things that really puts me off of it is like, they've watered down the term Nazi. Like, they throw it around like all willy nilly, and it's not a word that should be thrown around like that. I mean, it's just sort of punch a Nazi. I don't know if some of these kids have ever thrown a punch in their life, but they get wrapped up in this whole Antifa business. Antifa, by the way, a little history lesson on that, was started by Trotsky to destabilize Mussolini's Italy. And then Antifa stands for antifascista or something like that, Italian for anti-fascist. But modern day Antifa is like very violent. A lot of the students that get wrapped up in it are smashing their own campuses. Like, I've still got money in an RESP, but I am not going back to college when things are like this. It's just,
It's that bad, eh? Like you don't even want to be in that environment. The
oh yeah, no,
indoctrination.
I have to walk on eggshells, because like, what if I say one wrong thing and it's another mob after me? Like, even at Mount Royal University here in Calgary, there was that whole incident where a guy decided to wear one of those "Make America Great" hats again. Like, and there's this whole confrontation that made the news of this young lady getting in his face and yelling at him, and another gentleman ripped the hat off of his head. Like, it's just sort of, it's juvenile. Like, I thought that universities and stuff like that were meant to challenge your ideas and force you to sort of like, change your perspective. And now we live in a world where you need safe spaces. No, 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 that's not how this should be working. Not at all. So there's definitely two camps. There's the kids that are definitely being brainwashed by, liberal arts degrees and all this kind of stuff. And then there's a lot of people that are just waking up,
Yeah.
I think a big change for me was like, there's people like close to me that I care about. Like, I've got a surrogate niece and all this kind of stuff. And like, that was a big sort of change in my perspective, and sort of growing up a little bit, was like, it's, there's people that I care for or depend on me. And like, made me think like, what's Canada going to look like in 10, 15 years? Like, what's this Canada going to look like for my kids, future generations, and stuff like that? Like,
So that got you really thinking when you started to see the direction of the country and then look further down the road.
Yeah.
They kind of alarmed you. How do you view Trudeau now? Like,
Um, he frustrates me at times. Like, it's just I don't see him as like sort of a strong leader. Like, it seems to be like he's getting tossed around. The fact that he just doesn't focus on like some of the issues that I wish that he would. It. He seemed like a reasonable choice during the election, but like then we essentially elected a drama teacher. I think that was his background for
so that's how
politics.
you view him? Yeah, basically, just
Like,
as a drama
yeah,
teacher. Yeah,
pretty much. Like,
yeah, that's
so
sad, isn't it? That's very sad to actually be in that position of authority. Charles, do you think a
yeah,
lot of people are starting to question their judgment?
I think so. It's
Yeah,
I mean, and that's like been the case. It doesn't matter what age that I talk to. Like, sort of, I've got family friends that are my parents' generation that many people would assume would be conservative, but like no, they're all more sort of liberal NDP types, and they voted liberal, and they're not happy with the way that Trudeau is going either. And it's I think it's more than just young people. I think it's like a lot of Canadians are starting to realize, sort of
yeah,
there's
yeah.
because I mean there's liberal, and then there's like the far left way that Trudeau is running
Hmm.
things. Like it's just sort
Sure.
of uh, not a big fan of like I'm a big free speech advocate, so I'm not a fan of M103. I'm not a big fan of Bill C16. Like I've got no problem calling a trans person whatever they want, or like, but like all this stuff, 76 different genders, gender fluid, gender this, gender that. Like I don't. How am I meant to just sort of like look someone, size them up and down, and assume that they're this, that, or the next thing? Like it's and if I misgender someone, I can get taken in front of a human rights tribunal. Like I think that's pretty extreme, but it could happen. Like it's that's essentially like what that bill states is. It's just sort
Sure.
of more
Sure.
hampering of free speech,
Yep.
and that's not what I want. Like I want the exact opposite of that. Like I think that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and if someone has really horrible things, let them say it. People will like let them out themselves as like the horrible person that they are, and people will see that for what it is. Like hampering speech, I think, is dangerous. It's
Hmm.
I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Harper's barbaric cultural practices hotline, but I'm also not a big fan of M103.
Hmm.
Like it's just frustrates me to like
Yep.
it's just
Yep.
I can't speak my mind without like potentially ending up in jail or anything. Like it's I really envy the United States First Amendment for that. It's
Hmm.
I mean, like what
Cool.
defines hate speech on like some of these issues? Like, and I mean, like anything to the right of Michael Moore is considered far right these days by these people. So it's I mean, I consider myself a classic British liberal with like a libertarian streak. So, but yeah,
Well, at least you're awakening up, Charles.
uh,
And we encourage you to try and put all the pieces together. Look at the globalist agenda,
yeah,
because in our opinion, this is what's going on underneath. Is a globalist agenda. It's been going on for decades, and as far as we're concerned, the establishment wants to turn us into a globalist village. Actually, all this diversity talk is BS as far as we're concerned.
yeah.
It's actually leading to no diversity. And the
Oh yeah,
good
just
start,
time to bust out the
yeah,
communist like the uniforms, like one size fits all for men and women, like or one color, one style. Like it's just take a look at like any communist regime where they've got a dress code. everyone's just going to be wearing the exact same thing.
Yeah, so
And
you know
I
that's
believe
where
in like the individual, not groups. It's just sort of like judge a man by his character, not by.
yeah. So what they want to do is create us into all abstract individuals. Everyone they want to sever our cultural ties, our ethnic ties, our core values, our core beliefs, our core principles. They want to cut off our heritage, our identity, and we'll just be an abstract individual, a mere taxpayer consumer. That's
It's
what they're
very
working
Orwellian.
towards.
It's very
Yes,
Orwellian. Like,
that's what they're
it's
working towards right now. And right now, they're targeted on Anglo Canadians. They want to push us down because we're the majority in Canada. And but for other groups out there, you're going to be next. So this is just a globalist agenda, new world order, Charles. We got a lot of videos, so you should look at them. And this is what we're standing against. And it's not just the liberals, right? It doesn't matter which party you get in there, they're still pursuing the same globalist agenda. This benefits the corporate globalists, it benefits the big parties. So, and it's destroying our country. We can all see it. And, and I think you can see some of this, Charles, right? You can start to connect these dots.
yeah, no, it's especially like growing up in the '90s and then sort of having the internet for most of my life, even uh, you know, just take a look at Silicon Valley's takeover. Like they've got a extreme agenda. So you've got Alphabet Inc., which owns Google, and Google owns YouTube. Like these guys are extremely far left, and they're extremely pushing these agendas. All of these agendas get put above any other sort of alternative and conservative media. Um, a lot of the alternative media that I would check out, like these guys that run YouTube channels and stuff like that, they're constantly getting like deplatformed. Like they don't want people to hear the other side of a story or another perspective
Right,
on a story.
right,
Like it's just
right.
so it sort of goes like way beyond just Canada, but like Canada is what's the focus here. It's just uh, but the cards are stacked against anyone that goes outside the grain.
Oh,
And
yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
it's just you have to claw tooth and nail to
Yep.
but everybody just keeps on like I swear like the more that they sort of try to take over and sort of push their stuff, the more people start to push away. And I think we're at this sort of turning point where there's going to be more and more people that are they're sick and tired of all of this kind of stuff. It's uh, pretty much it just never ends. Like I thought I was done with politics after the 2015 election, but little did I know we were going to be launching into a year and a half of American politics. And since Trump won, no one's ever shut up about it. So it's I guess if you can't beat them, join them. And here I am joining a political party for the first time in my life.
Well, congratulations, and
Thanks for having me aboard.
Yeah, no, we welcome. Again, this is youth are our future. We know that. We want to encourage more Canadian youth to join us. And you got great ideas, Charles. Hats off to you for being able to fight through the manipulation, through the lies. Remember Trudeau? He did over 40 campaign lies. He basically lied his way in. All right. So it's difficult. A lot of people are getting manipulated. They're working hard 9 to 5. So you know, it shows well on you that you can see through it. Imagine if you were still in this kind of like brainwash mode, right? And
well, if I was a few years younger, I might have still been sucked into that kind of stuff. Like is the thing. Like it's I think it really depends on what you're being like shown and when, like to an extent. Like I was disenfranchised already, but yeah, as long as like people are able to actually get the alternative sources of like facts and everything instead of
sure,
just completely spoon fed one line. Like people,
Right.
as I said, critical thinking. People need to like not just take everything at face value. So, where was I going with that? Sorry, I lost the thought. So, but one of the things that you'll see these days, like when it comes to media sensationalism, is like there's two different, like, what would sell a paper better? A story about a dog bites a man, that happens
Yep.
all the time,
Yep.
or
Yep.
what would really grab people? Man bites dog. So, what kind of story do you think they're going to run with if they have a chance? And that's why I think like a lot of this media these days are getting so corrupt. Is and like there's like stories where basically like a rumor will happen, people will speculate on it, and then someone will report on that on the speculation, and then it gets
Right.
passed around as
Right.
fact. And so this is how the misinformation, like it's this whole big spiral, and that's what people need to start reading between the lines in. And like, you know, I think more people do that, more people will wake up. And it's no different when it comes to politics, especially when it comes to politics. Like, so
So you think keep informing people, keep
yeah, no, it's also
eventually
like
you're going to break through.
the youth today. Also, like, you know, sort of we like internet memes and crude jokes online and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't think the left really knows how to meme or, you know, make those jokes. Every time that they try, it's really cringeworthy, and like it's I think that also helps a lot. Like people just need to keep on, you know, spreading messages and keep talking.
Exactly. And so, what do you like about the NCA? That you, not now that you're with us, because
Well,
you know we're against M103. You know
yeah,
we're
no,
against the
it's
mass
I basically
immigration.
took a look at, like, you know, sort of the main parties in Canada that we've had for, you know, ever since I was a wee bab. Could never get in with the Greens, could never get in with NDP, really. Liberals, you know, I was never a conservative, like I didn't, but I was kind of raised that way. So always more left leaning, and just like, you know, dealing with Trudeau, I needed a change. And I took like after finding out about you guys and sort of reading your policies, it's basically lines up with my current view of the world. You know, as I said, like I'm not completely against, you know, sort of having these 3 million people in it through immigration, but it shouldn't be a quick mass migration. Like we should make sure that these people are going to actually like be a benefit to Canada, and not just and, you know, marijuana needs to be just legalized. You know, I have no problems with the current slated, you know, proposition of like up to 4 plants per household or 30 grams on an individual. I think it's silly that, like, you know, it's hasn't been legalized already, considering that it's just a plant that grows in the ground. I think that would probably take a lot of like money out of the pockets of drug dealers and stuff like that if you just gave Canadians the option, like, you know.
Sure, sure.
So on that we agree. Just, yeah, as I said, it just the NCA aligns with the way that I've been viewing the world since I turned 30.
Yeah, so we have a pretty balanced. You know, we're balanced. We're not
Yeah,
extreme. You know, we reject racism.
yeah,
We reject supremacy. We actually had to boot out a couple of members who we viewed as supremacists.
yeah. And
And
I would like love to
but
just say, like, condemn that mosque fire in Edson. That is
yeah,
horrible. Like,
right, right.
not helping the whatsoever. Like, you know, it's, I don't know what kind of agenda that person has, but like, you know, when we're already dealing with like difficult race relations and stuff like that, like, you know, it's like, what kind of message does that send to the Muslim community that already lives in Canada, that are, sort of the uh, liberal, more like uh, secular Muslims that just want to be part of Canada and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah. So yeah. The policy of the NCA is very clear. We don't hate all Muslims like some groups out there,
yeah,
and we actually had to move away for some groups because they have a hatred for all
yeah,
Muslims, and that's something the NCA doesn't support. Consistent with the guy from Jihad Watch,
yeah,
Robert Spencer, we take a position that we embrace reformist Muslims
yeah,
in the party. At the end of the day, people are people. So if you're a racist out there, you're a supremacist, that's something we don't support.
yeah.
So, and I don't think, the majority of Canadians don't support that. So, people who think like that got to get their act together because that hate is not helping, like you said, and it's on the left, it's on the right, it's in the middle. So that's the way it is. But these hate mongers are just making it worse for any patriotic movement. So, you want to make things worse, you want to start fights, you want to get in conflict. We can look at Antifa, we can look at the, elements on the far right. They're just part of the problem. And you're just helping Trudeau.
Hmm.
So, put your hate aside and start looking at the bigger picture. Right, Charles?
Well, yeah, like these
Yeah.
people are really good at divide and conquer when really what we need to be looking at is winning the hearts and minds. Like,
Yeah.
so,
So I'm going to look at some of these questions because Rick's asking, would you try and repeal M103? So, Rick, our policy is very clear. We will rescind E41 M103. They have no place in Canada. They're violating our freedom of speech. We have a comprehensive policy online. Go look at it. Do we hate all Muslims? Of course, we don't hate all Muslims. We're actually in touch with some reformist Muslims, and they're great people, and we're working with them, and we're proud of that fact. And we will work with any Canadian. It doesn't matter what your race, religion, ethnicity. We will work with you as long as you're putting our country first, our people first. So that's where we stand on that. How do you feel about that, Charles?
fully agree.
Yeah.
That's
So but look at the hate in Halifax. You saw it there,
yeah, no,
Charles.
it's
The intolerance. This was on the left, and look at them. They were labeling us as, I don't even want to repeat Nazi, white supremacist, whatever, on and on. It's not reality. Everyone, we can all see it. So that's what we're dealing with. But we need to educate people not only on the left but also on the right. Hating all people is not the answer. And you mentioned that guy, the Imam Tahiti,
yeah,
who's
Imam
doing
Tahiti.
great work. I encourage people to look up Tahiti from Australia. We've actually done some videos on this Imam, but he's doing great work on reforming Islam. So I encourage people to look him up. And there's
Another one.
there's other reformists in Canada that are working very hard. But let's everyone remember this: the NC doesn't get caught up in Islam. That's only one issue. There's so many issues affecting the Canadian people. That's only one tentacle of the globalist agenda, which is dividing us. So let's not get caught up in one issue. We have laws in this country and enforcement, and we have the policies to deal with that issue. Go look at our ban on radical extremism. That issue is dealt with there. But a lot of the stuff that's going on, Charles, is connected to the charter.
Yeah.
The charter is allowing this, right? And but the average Canadian is not about hate. We're common sense Canadians. We care about our families. We care about other people, but there's limits to our generosity. There has to be some form of intolerance, right? They talk about inclusion, everyone, but there has to be some form of intolerance to certain forms of inclusion. We can't just have everyone in our country. It doesn't make sense. The world is massive. There's so many people. We can't have everyone coming to our country, right? So that's why we have a pretty rigorous immigration policy that puts our people first, Charles. You know
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
And it's about reining back this mass immigration, which is just part of the globalist agenda, right? And what we need in this country, and that's what we say. We need unity. We need people working together. But we're getting the reverse. We're getting the reverse.
Yeah.
And people can go on about radicals in our society. Look at our policy. We deal with the radicals, extremists. Go to our ban on radical extremists. It's a very progressive policy that deals with it, but it requires constitutional reform as well. But those are the challenges we face as a country. But we're not going to back down. We've been attacked. We've been robbed. We've been assaulted. But that's fine. But we're not going to lower ourselves to that level. Right, Charles?
Yep. Yep. Is there other questions?
So another issue here. Loretta says stop sending Canadian money out of the country. There's billions and billions. You're aware of this, right, Charles?
No. What's up?
Billions and billions just flowing out to the UN, to other countries. Previous government did the same. And we think it's connected to special interests. It's helping certain corporations. And while our people are suffering.
Doesn't Trudeau have some kind of like foundation or fund or something like that? I thought I heard something about like something similar to like the Clinton Foundation in a way.
He's got what's called the Trudeau Foundation.
Yeah.
And we have a policy on it, but it's just flooded now with donations, everyone. I think a lot of people are aware of it. And I think it was barely existing. And now it's over, it must be approaching over $1 billion in his Trudeau Foundation. It's unbelievable. And there must be pay to play going on, kickbacks, you name it. We already know the Bombardier executive is actually is one of the members of the boards on the Trudeau Foundation. So you can see the overlap, but people need to dig it further into that. But the bottom line, everyone, is that this country is massively in debt. We're a debtor nation. The federal debt is over $1 trillion in market debt and growing. We're paying as a country over $63 billion a year to commercial banks in debt service payments as a country as a whole. If you look at the federal, provincial, and municipal debt, and this is what's going on. And this money, we think, is trickling back to these big parties. And it's a big scam that's going on, this debt. And this government in power is just adding to the debt. They've had deficits every year, and now they're announcing they're spending more of our money. This is the future for our children and their children. They're going to be debt slaves more and more. And this debt's bad. The debt service payments is because it's less money for the Canadian people. Every year the pie's getting smaller. That's what's going on. And another thing, Charles, the taxes, and I assume you're working, right?
Yeah, freelance IT tech. So.
Yeah, the taxes are out of control in this country, everyone. I think we all know it. But recently they've gone up to 43.6% on average per Canadian. The average Canadian is almost paying 50% in taxes. Added to this, the government is now pushing ahead with the carbon tax federally. And they call it carbon pricing, but it's really a tax. And guess what? That's going to impact the Canadian family because that's going to increase the cost of Canadian businesses which is going to trickle down to Canadian families. So you're going to pay more tax. And what makes this worse, Charles, is Canada is basically carbon neutral.
Yeah.
Yet they're pushing this phony climate change on us. Canada is basically carbon neutral due to all the
So I just
vast
want to answer
carbon sinks.
a couple quick questions here. This is Ryan Dean. Muslims are followers of Islam. Do you support Islam?
Yeah,
I would say that I don't support Islam.
Yeah.
I would suggest that there's a difference between Muslims and Islamism. I don't like Islamism, but on an individual basis, I don't see any problems with Muslims. If you want to talk about another reformed Muslim, Mr. Dean, take a look at Majid Nawaz, who the Southern Poverty Law Center are actually having to pay him $3.4 million in a settlement because they called him a extremist, but he's actually he was Muslim. He got radicalized. He spent 4 years in a Egyptian jail, fell out of Islam, and he's still Muslim, but he's reformed and is doing everything in his power to de-radicalize and help reform Islam.
Yeah.
So
those are the people we got to support, everyone, and that's something our party is trying to do. Unfortunately, they're very few because of the consequences. But the NCA policy is very clear. If you go to our ban on radical extremism, we want to ban political Islam. We do not support Sharia in Canada. That's very clear. It's in our policy. Does that mean we hate all Muslims? Of course we don't hate all Muslims, but we hate that ideology which is oppressing women, oppressing homosexuals, oppressing Jews, oppressing infidels. We cannot have that in our country. So that's something we are dead against, and that's very transparent in our policy. But, taking that further and hating all Muslims is something we can't support as a party. And like I said, we're working. Some of the stories, I have to share this. Some of the Muslims I'm actually personally in contact with, it's a tragedy, everyone. It's an absolute tragedy. What they have to deal with within that ideology in their communities. And I'm hoping to have one of these Canadians on our Q&A so at least he can expose what's going on behind the scenes. But, if you're a reformist Muslim and you're sincere about that, please join the NCA. We want you in our party. We need you in our party, and we will support you because you are the harbinger of change, of a beautiful change within that ideology. To actually turn and hate all Muslims is a very narrow-minded approach and actually counter to Canadian values. So, but I hope that's clear to everyone. But that's our position. It's consistent with Robert Spencer, who I had the pleasure of meeting, who's devoted his life to exposing jihad. But let's not get focused, bogged down on that one issue. It's only one issue of many that the Canadian people are going through. And there's so many other issues out there. It's only one tentacle of the globalist agenda. If you get wrapped up in that one issue, you lose focus. You need to keep grounded, keep level, and stay focused. Don't get caught up, so obsessed with one issue. Do you agree with that, Charles?
Well, yeah, no, there's multiple issues.
There's multiple issues. They're all very serious, everyone. But there are. Do you know other reformist Muslims? Because I know the one in Australia. I know there's.
That was Majid Nawaz. He's a British-born Muslim. That
Razi is a woman. She's doing great work.
Okay.
I'm actually reading Bridget Gabriel's book, Fatwa, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
This is one issue. And I'm proud of the NCA that we don't get bogged down on one issue. And bigger than Islamization of Canada is the mass immigration, everyone. We would argue that's having greater impact on our country. They're going to be allowing over 400,000 a year, and haven't had a single referendum, Charles.
Yeah.
It's all top-down governance. And our country is changing before our eyes, everyone. We all know it. So we need to band together and fight this globalist agenda that's going on. The good news is that there's a lot of people fighting back in Europe, in the U.S., Australia. So it's not like you're alone. But we need to wake up, everyone. These are serious issues, and there's a lot of manipulation going on of values, a lot of intolerance, Charles, like you discussed, where people are beat down who go against the flow. And you talked about the NCA, how we basically got a media blackout. The only time we're on the media is when they're attacking us. Right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's as if it wasn't for one little snippet of video that ended up on YouTube, just cell phone footage from that park incident.
Yeah, so that's the radical left. That's the radical left, front and center, everyone. And they're extremely intolerant. But, we argue that they're just an extension of the mainstream media, and they're just an extension of the federal government. Because the federal government is calling people racist, is calling people names, and so does the media. So they're actually giving these people license to come out and insult people. Right? It's all connected. So
okay, Ryan, I will read out what a Muslim is. Muslim is someone who follows or practices Islam, a monotheistic Abrahamic religion. Muslims consider the Quran, their holy book, to be the verbatim word of God as revealed to the Islamic prophet and messenger Muhammad. Are we done? Can we move on, please?
Yeah, exactly. The bottom line, go look at our policy, Ryan. I think you'll like our policy. I think we're probably the most outspoken party on that issue. So look up our ban on radical extremism. I think you'll be impressed. But at the end of the day, like I said, we agree with Robert Spencer. We support reformist Muslims. And these people deserve our support. They're on the front lines of this radical ideology. And like I said, it almost brings you to tears when you hear the stories of what some of these people go through, Charles. And I'm actually in contact with someone, and it's just horrific. The abuse, the persecution, the controlling. And I'm hoping to have this guy on our Q&A to expose it. I'm not sure if he's going to come on. His life could be at risk, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But let's move on from that issue. Is there any other issues you want to talk about, Charles, tonight?
Well, I could go on to some other sort of current events on the world stage, but that mostly wraps things up.
But you realize, Charles, Trudeau is nothing more than a globalist puppet, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's interesting seeing Brussels shaking its boots right now. The EU is starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
Italy just elected a populist government.
Right.
And they're turning away boats now. Hungary has a interesting little way of letting migrants through Hungary without actually letting them in Hungary. Poland has been standing up to Brussels, and of course there was Brexit and all of this kind of stuff. I think it's not just in Canada, but all over Europe and stuff like that. People have been waking up too, and
also Austria too, Hungary,
yeah,
Czechoslovakia. There's movements in France, Le Pen. There's movements in Germany. So we don't want it to go to the far right of, we
Yeah.
don't want a reemergence of fascism, but there has to be some kind of common sense going forward. If we continue with this globalist agenda, that's going to be the ultimate tyranny. Wouldn't you say, Charles? Like New World Order, one government?
Oh yeah, they've been working on that for like years and years and years. Like I think like even back to the '90s or something like that.
Yeah,
There was
okay,
voice
yeah,
snippets of like New
yeah.
World Order.
I'm just we're gonna try and get to some of these questions. Matt Stewart, he's asking when will we be back in Halifax to speak. Matt, we're holding a meeting in a couple of weeks just outside of Halifax. If you can email us at info National Citizens Alliance, we can send you the details of that meeting. We are planning events in for Labor Day weekend in the Maritimes. But like I said, there is a meeting in a couple of weeks, Matt. So be sure to email us. And yeah, and Kim's right. Thank you, Kim. She says, so you will never stop the New World Order by being complacent and just talking about it. 100%. You have to get out there, get your hands dirty, understand the issues, and do this for your kids. Do it for future generations, because those are sadly the people who are going to be most affected. Think about it. What kind of world country are we leaving them? And that's very good, Kim. And this is a tough agenda, but you can see, as Charles just said, there's so many movements that are rising up to challenge what's going on. So there's change going on. We got to make sure it's the right change, and we have to stay true to our values as Canadians and principles, and then we're going to be on the right track. Yeah, Ryan, I appreciate your comments. I'm very aware of uh, about radical Islam, and I appreciate your concern about that issue. It's something we take seriously, but it's only one issue of many issues facing the Canadian people. We have a comprehensive policy on it, ban on radical extremism, which deals with political Islam and Sharia. So, as far as we're concerned, that issue is dealt with from our standpoint, and we raise awareness when we can about it. That's something we don't support. And like I said, we have to support some of these Muslims who are breaking away. If they're sincere and true reformists, and they're not, taqiyya, which is deceiving, and you can screen them out over time, but there are legitimate reformists out there. And there's a number in Canada, and especially the Australian imam, right, Charles?
Yeah.
So that's what it is. So the New World Order is powerful, and there will be civil backlash. It is powerful, Kim. There's incredible money behind it, and they got lots of these puppet politicians behind it. It's a real challenge, but a lot of people are waking up, and we see a lot of courageous people in Europe who are finally making a stand. We're pretty outspoken ourselves, and we got no choice than to fight back. This thing from Ryan, he's going on about some invitation to Muslim Student Association, Alberta rally, whatever. That's past tense. That was last year. It was a public event. As a party, we invited all groups to have a dialogue. That's just the way we operate. We're not afraid of confronting any radicals, Ryan. And the best way to deal with them is to confront them, right? There's no reason to create separation, right? We're not looking for a fight. If they want to have a dialogue, we will have a dialogue. But we're not going to back away from that. And when we hold a public event, it's open to everyone to come. And if there's violent people there, they will be dealt with. That's all there is to that. Loretta says Austria kicked out radical imams, closed down mosques associated with terrorist countries. Yeah, we read that, and they got a real problem there, Loretta, in Austria, and they're dealing with it. And I encourage you to look at our policies. We want to end all foreign funding of mosque in Canada. We want to put a restriction on halal. We want to end any form of Sharia in Canada, So we're there. And we have very strong immigration policy to deal with it as well. So, but this is only one issue. Let's not get wrapped up in one issue. It's something that's totally fixable if there's the right people in power. This is totally fixable.
Human trafficking is real. The government is complicit in this.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping this reformist Muslim comes on our show, everyone. But I feel his life may be threatened, so maybe somehow we can disguise him and we can have him on. But like I said, these are people we need to support. They are facing serious prosecution with their own faith, within their own communities. It's very tragic, and we need to support these people. We can't turn our backs on them, and that's where we stand as a party. And like I said, Ryan, we're open to anyone. This was a public event. We're not going to segregate an event. We're not going to say no Muslims allowed, okay? So if Muslims want to come and listen, they're welcome to, and we will debate them, and that's all there is to it. We're not afraid of any groups, so it's best to confront them. Do you agree, Charles?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. We're not going to back.
Consider is that a lot of the families that are already living in Canada that aren't radicalized. There's many of them are actually living in complete fear of some of the mass migration, potential jihadis moving in. It's a lot of them move to Canada to get away from all of that.
Yeah, so exactly.
It's kind of interesting to see that.
I'm looking at Christina here. She's saying CPS is attacking families in Canada.
She knows a lot more about that than I do because
who is CPS? Can you
Child Protective Services?
Oh, okay. Yeah, she knows a lot about that. Yeah. Anyways, well, I'll just deal with Ryan once more. We were the permanent holders, Ryan. We were working with other groups, but at the end of the day, we're the permanent holders, and we're not going to segregate people from an event. It's a public event in a public venue. So, just get over it. And our position's very clear. We support reformist Muslims as long as they're sincere. You don't have to support us. If you want to hate all Muslims, that's your business. We don't recommend it, but it's up to you as an individual. And this is only one issue, everyone. Let's not get bogged down in it. We felt this issue's dealt with. We have so many great policies that deal with it. We're not going to get bogged down in it. The big issue is the intolerance, Charles.
Yeah,
there's so much intolerance in our society, everyone. It's just growing and growing. And anyone who's against the status quo is beaten down. And but the good news is that for us, we didn't lower ourselves to what was happening to us when we were assaulted, when we were robbed, Charles. And you saw the video. And you saw that we're decent people. Right?
Yeah. Well, as I said, it's just like the guy having a drink poured on his head. That kid's right to pour a drink on his head. It's just absolutely disgraceful to see that kind of stuff happen, just so blatantly. It's just maybe I'm getting old or something, but I don't understand. the mindset.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a old saying about if you're young and you're not a liberal, you have no heart, and if you're not more conservative when you're older, you have no brain.
Yeah.
So,
but anyways, on June 25th, I want to let everyone know we're going to have Professor Duchesne on for a special Q&A, and we're going to get right into the globalist agenda that evening. So that's on Monday, June 25th, Professor Duchesne, and we're going to dig deep into this issue to try and make it as transparent and clear to everyone. So this guy is a courageous, brave academic from New Brunswick, and it's going to be our pleasure to have him on live. And Loretta says, if the government won't be accountable, why should the people? Why should the people? Yeah, well, we can't lower ourselves to the level of the government, Loretta, then we're no different. The only way we can go forward is to stay true to our values and beliefs. As soon as we lose those, we're no different. We're done as a people. And right now, there's an attack on our values, principles, our identity, our heritage, our culture, right? That is going on. What's this about? Bruce is going on about human trafficking. Do you know much about that, Charles?
No, as I said, Christina's more the expert on that.
Yeah. So we're going to look further into this human trafficking. Christina, who's supporting us, we're going to learn from her because she's pretty insightful on that issue, working in that field.
Yeah, 685 deaths in foster care in Alberta, she says.
Matt. Oh, here's Matt. Listen to him. He's saying, how do you feel about the media? I'm just going to put it up here. How do you feel about the media spinning patriots who are for legal migration as racists and bigots? Yeah, that's pathetic, Matt. And I actually dealt with that with Professor Duchesne. And basically what's going on is there's the media and the government saying either you're pro-immigrant or anti-immigrant, and there's no middle ground. Whereas the NCA takes a middle ground on it. And this is the intolerance we're fighting, Matt. And it's dividing us, and it's hurting our society. They're afraid to have an honest discourse on mass immigration. So they attack with racists, bigots, white supremacists, you name it. We just got to keep fighting that. Well, we have a number of videos on this topic, Matt, if you look at them. But what's happening with the mass immigration is that there's corporate globalist interests that are benefiting from all these mass immigrants coming into our country. Also, these establishment parties are benefiting with more votes and money trickling back from them, from these corporations. That's what's going on. The bottom line is that the majority of Canadians do not benefit from mass immigration. That is a fact. So we all need to wake up. But the reason they're fighting back is because they want to keep the status quo happening. They want to keep the money coming in for these special interests, keep the votes coming in, and the money trickling back. So that's why they're fighting back. But yeah, we're going to have to learn more about that issue, Christina, CPS, but we look forward to learning more about it from you. Thank you for sharing that, Loretta. She's saying there's a shipping yard in Thunder Bay who takes kids and traffic them. Charles?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, we're going to get into it, Christina, and we're going to have to learn more about this issue. Slipping into a country without laws will lead to street level justice. Crystal. So I guess she's. I'm not. I'm not sure where she's going. I think she's saying our laws are being eroded,
Mm.
and people are going to take laws into their own hands.
I mean, take a look at London, where they've got so many knife crimes that the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has been trying to said something about like blunting the tips of kitchen knives because that's one of the tools that a lot of these guys are using, and I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. You're never going to be able to stop people from hurting each other. Anyone that wants to do harm, even if they ban rocks, eventually people are just going to be making prison shanks and pointy sticks and stabbing each other. So it's if someone wants to do harm, they're going to figure out a way. So,
yeah, yeah, it's pretty serious what's going on, everyone. But for us, it all ties back to the globalist agenda. Once you understand that, then you can understand all these tentacles at work in our country. And we have a number of videos on our YouTube page, also our Facebook page. We encourage people to take a look at them. And, that's the main focus of the NCA is the battle against this globalist agenda, which we believe is killing our country and harming our people, especially our future generations. We do not want to become a globalist village. We do not want to become what's like a mongrelized populace where we're all just mixed and and we have we're just taxpayers and consumers, because that's the end goal. This diversity is leading to no diversity. That's the real agenda at work, everyone. And we're going to talk extensively about that on June 25th. Thank you, Shane. Shane. Yeah, I just want to talk about Shane. Yeah, Shane. Yeah, that's a good one. We actually did a video. We actually went down to Roxham recently to see it for ourselves. And, the safe third country agreement, it's just a short agreement with the U.S. about the border and how to deal with people crossing from Canada to the U.S., U.S. to Canada. We just want a simple amendment, Shane, to the safe third country agreement. And our amendment would be, in short, Canada will not accept any asylum cases from the U.S. Period. That's it. We will not accept any asylum cases. And that will put an end to the nonsense that's happening at the border. And we shouldn't accept any asylum cases from the U.S. That's a democratic country. It's the most economically well-off country in the world. And there's no reason we should be accepting asylum cases from the U.S. That just needs to be written into that agreement. Anyone who comes across claiming asylum will be deported back to the U.S. That's it. Done.
Part of the globalist agenda is to take child rearing decisions away from parents. Yes, I've definitely seen that before. That's going down in Australia. That's going down in several parts of the world. They're also starting to teach like some really strange stuff, like to younger and younger kids. About changing genders, and they're even talking about like some of these groups want to like give hormone blockers to kids like younger and younger and younger, and it's just like I don't think they realize exactly what damages that will do to a kid, especially growing up in the formative years.
Right. So here's Ryan back. He says, "How do you physically halt it from happening?" Like, Ryan, like, we appreciate your passion on that issue. It is only one issue of many issues facing the Canadian people. Okay, that's the first thing. Canadians are way overtaxed. There's massive debt in this country. But in terms of this issue, it's just we got to have people in power who are going to put the people first. And this is just a matter of legislating to deal with the radical extremism, which is coming from different parts of the spectrum. It's not just radical Islam. There's other radical extremists in our country. We have zero tolerance. So, but there is a problem with this issue is because of the charter. And we have an amendment of the charter, section 2, to deal with freedom of religion. We do not think it should be applied to radical extremist ideologies. So this is going to be a real battle to deal with this issue, Ryan. But we have all the policies in place to deal with it. It's going to be tough, though, because of what's been put in place from previous governments. But like I said, as a party, we do not hate all Muslims. We support reformist Muslims. So, obviously, maybe this isn't the party for you, but that's a very clear common sense stance of the party. And anyone who's breaking away from radical Islam is someone we're going to support. That's all there is to it. And we're open to dialogue with any groups. We're not afraid of any groups. Doesn't matter if they're Muslim Brotherhood or any whatever. If they want to talk and dialogue, we will dialogue and tell them what we believe. We're not afraid of that, and especially at a public venue. We have a radical government. Yes, we do on so many levels, and we can't get into it tonight, Christina, but it's on so many levels. People need to see through the rhetoric. People need to see the common sense of what's not happening. There's so many spins, Charles. Yep. You see it in the media every day, everyone. There's a spin on almost every article that's put in the media. Ryan's asking, how will the NCA stop the legal border crossing? It starts with a safe third country agreement with the U.S. Ryan, we need to amend that so 0 asylum cases are accepted from the U.S. Once that's in place, we deport anyone seeking asylum, anyone crossing illegally, back to the U.S. That problem would be solved right there. And we got to end these sanctuary cities in Canada. They're breaking our laws. That's another thing. Watch this. Stop watching the mainstream media. Stephanie says, Charles.
Oh yeah, no, it's here. Can you put a link into the chat? I can't seem to add to the chat. 1 second.
Yeah, I guess if you're watching it, Stephanie, watch it with a critical mind. Realize that there's so many spins. I'll give you an example. The CBC put a hit piece out on me. It's a 3-minute video, labeling me as some radical nutcase. And that's what they do. It's a propaganda outlet. Can you believe that? A 3-minute attack video on me. Can you believe it?
And a lot of the times with these interviews, they'll also they'll interview you for 10, 15 minutes, maybe longer, and then they'll chop that down into just the juicy slices of what they can use for their own narrative. I've seen it happen time and time again. Like, take a look at any of Jordan B. Peterson's videos where he's getting interviewed by an actual anchor or broadcaster compared to his actual lectures, and you can actually find the unedited footage online, and it tells a very different story than what you see from what gets put out.
Yeah, Ryan said it's easier than that. Make the entire border a legal port of entry. So, yeah, we don't even have to do that, Ryan. All we have to say in that act is we will not accept any asylum cases. That's it. That's all we have to say. Why not just say that? We will not accept any asylum cases. That's all you need to say. And actually act on it. That's what the conservatives are saying. Make it all a single port of entry. That's fine, but why cut to the chase? Just say we will not accept any asylum cases. That's all you need to say. in that act. Stephanie here.
Oh yeah, no,
See,
that's
Charles?
I can relate to that very strongly. It's just I think that's one of the things that's pushed me towards where I am right now. Uh,
What does she mean by front line, Charles?
well, we're constantly being bombarded by like the mainstream media and all of this kind of stuff, and I don't know about frontline is exactly the right word, but like just people that I think that the front line is essentially just anybody that's consuming news media is on the front line. It's
Oh, I see. Yeah.
that's why I fully support alternative sources of media and stuff like that. Nothing crazy, but you know citizen journalism and independent journalism. I found to be quite a bit more reliable on an unbiased take on what's going on than what you'll ever see from either side of the mainstream media spectrum.
Yeah, here's Ryan saying because it halts more than asylum seekers. That's fine, Ryan, but we're not against legal migrants coming into Canada. If they come in legally, we're not against all immigration. We're not going to stop all immigration into Canada. We want a temporary pause and substantial reduction. We're not going to stop immigration into Canada. There's people that leave the country and there's people that enter the country. We want balanced immigration. So I don't know what you're getting at there, but if you want to end all immigration, that's something we don't support. But we definitely support a substantial reduction. Yeah, isn't that disgusting, Stephanie? Look at her. See what she's saying there, right? Antifa beats up my friends at rallies. Antifa swarms my rallies on Parliament Hill. Isn't that disgusting, Stephanie? And that's what we experienced in Halifax. Unfortunately, we have security now.
If I had my way, I would have Antifa labeled a domestic terrorist group, just like they have been down in the States now.
So yeah, this is just radical left. You got, we put out in a video on radical social justice. But this Antifa is just an extension of the mainstream media and the federal government. That's where they're getting their orders from. And we know some of our members in Montreal tell us Antifa is actually working with these big parties now. Can you believe it? There's actually a high up member of Antifa that's going to run for the NDP in the next election.
Oh, yeah, no, there's also been college professors and even deans of universities that support Antifa. That happened down with UC Berkeley down in California. That's part of what caused all those riots down there within the past couple of years.
Yeah, look at that. That's exactly what happened to us in Halifax. Yeah. The police just stood by while we were assaulted. We have video of the guy robbing our stuff. We have still photos, but nothing's been done. So hopefully they catch the people. Yeah, that's fine, Ryan. There are port of entries. We don't need to call Canada a whole port of entry, okay? We don't want people just crossing from everywhere. If Canada is a whole port of entry, that means they have the right to cross anywhere along the border, right? It doesn't make sense. All we have to do in the Safe Third Country Agreement is to put in there that Canada will not accept any asylum cases from the U.S. These people will be deported back to the U.S. We will only accept people who come in legally, who have the proper paperwork, have gone through the proper process. That's it. That's all we need to do. And that whole border nightmare would be solved. It doesn't make sense. And we're paying for it, everyone, the Canadian taxpayers. It's unbelievable. And we're going to repost our video on Roxham so everyone can see it. But it's, fortunately we were able to talk to some neighbors there, and they gave us the insight on what's really happening there. It's very concerning, everyone. But this is only one issue. Legal migration, everyone, is only a small thing compared to the mass immigration. The mass immigration is bigger and way bigger number of people coming into our country that we're very concerned about. Yeah, these are very important issues, and yeah, we're gonna like I said, Ryan, we will repost that Roxanne video so people can see that. But I have to stress this again: illegal migration is only one part of the mass immigration. Everyone, there's hundreds of thousands of unemployed foreign university students, unemployed foreign graduate students who are coming into our country. A lot of them are working for cash under the table. They're making it tougher on Canadians who are unemployed. It does not make sense. This mass immigration does not make sense. And we're going to talk about this, especially on June 25th, but we already have videos on that, Ryan. Charles, it's just crazy what's happening. And there's these foreign educational administrators who are getting rich overnight.
Yeah.
Because they're bringing, because they get paid for everyone they bring in. It does not make sense. Yeah, and here's another issue, Charles. How do you feel about this, as one of our youth members, about the whole idea of integration?
Well, that's sort of been my stance when it comes to the potential 3 million migrants and whatnot. It's refugees is one thing, but a lot of these people are economic migrants. Like a lot of the people that are showing up on the borders of the EU on these dinghies and whatnot, they're coming from a third world country, but they're not coming from a war torn third world country. They're just using it as a free pass to get into the EU. And the thing is, with are they actually going to integrate after they come over here versus are they going to all set up shop in one community and isolate themselves and not sort of adopt Canadian values and Canadian way of life.
Yeah, see, the problem is if you look at the charter, everyone, Section 15, which the communist sympathizer Pierre Trudeau, he pushed on the Canadian people. Section 15 talks about equality and no discrimination, so people can come here and do whatever they want. Charles?
Yeah.
And then they're pushing multiculturalism on top of that. So the government is actually encouraging people who are coming to our country to not integrate. And there's another act that actually goes into it, the 1988 Multiculturalism Act, passed by the Conservatives, and it says the whole thrust of that act is to promote and enhance foreign cultures in Canada. That's what they're doing, Charles. Yeah. You see how they're undermining our country?
Well, we're meant to be one big, beautiful rainbow, aren't we?
Yeah. So that's what's going on, and we're obviously opposed to it. But hey, Ryan, we would never legislate officers every 20 feet along the U.S.-Canada border. A lot of that border is inhabitable. There's mountains, there's lakes. It's just very tough terrain. It doesn't make sense. There's natural barriers. It does not make sense. A lot of these illegal migrants are coming through spots in Quebec, Manitoba. They're not streaming across the entire country because it's not passable. What's this saying here?
Yeah, that's a good one.
What is she saying there?
In the first place, we should insist that the immigrant who comes here in good faith becomes a Canadian and assimilates himself to
Yeah,
us.
exactly. Exactly.
Should be treated on exact equality with everyone else. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly, Matt. Matt, but the opposite is happening, and it's actually tied into the charter. Actually, Pierre Trudeau was saying, just come here and be yourself. Come here and do whatever you want. And basically, that's what they're doing now, and they're undermining our society. And with the mass immigration, it's only intensifying. So we have an integration policy. We believe people should integrate into being Canadian.
Yeah, we touched on Wilfrid Laurier earlier. The whole situation with Stephanie, Lindsay Shepherd. And that kangaroo court that they put him in. I still don't understand why any university needs a diversity and equity office.
Yeah, that's fine. But, Ryan, we read your comments. We appreciate your passion for that issue. We take it seriously, too. Like I said, it just requires amendment of the Safe Third Country Agreement. We obviously need enforcement at the border, but we don't support putting Canadian Border Patrol every 20 feet. It does not make sense. There's only certain areas where someone can actually pass into the country. And we also look at this from another angle. We would cut off actually any form of social assistance for 5 years for anyone coming into the country, Ryan. So we've already dealt with that. The reason they're coming into the country, some of these people, is to take advantage of our welfare system, our social services, our health care. But that's something we would cut off, Ryan. So these people would have no incentive to come here if they can't exploit our system. So that's how we approach it. Look at Loretta.
Well, it's when I hear stuff about like honor killings and like acid attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah. What do you see that's going on, but they're not reporting it, Charles. So this is a good example, Loretta. It's not only what's in the media, but what's not in the media. Right?
Well, one of the interesting things about 2018 is that, now that ISIS is getting more destabilized, you're going to be seeing a lot more lone wolf terrorist attacks. Like I hope to God we never see another 9/11 or anything like that. So I'm not going to rule it out, but a lot of these attacks now are these tiny little cells or even lone wolves that that what happened with that guy over in Russia during the World Cup. The guy just swerves and runs over all these people, and they say that he was tired, or the police report that he was drunk. I've never seen anybody be that spry running down the street if they were just woken up or shit-faced drunk. Pardon my language. So.
Yeah. Here's Ryan again. Look, he's going on about it. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Ryan, the source of this is all the welfare and, the health care. As soon as someone crossed the border, Ryan, they have rights. Did you know that? And under our current framework, they get access to health care. They get access to our welfare system. So this stuff needs to end, Ryan. And then you won't see all these people coming across. Not to mention, if we catch any illegals, we're going to deport them right away. So, this isn't, a complex issue. It can be dealt with, but right now there's not the political fortitude to deal with it. But, the source of this issue is all the handouts we're giving. That's why these people are coming. A lot of them are coming here. They want a free handout. That's what we need to stop.
Okay, Loretta,
Yeah,
that incident in Toronto, that was more inspired by, that was a guy that was trying to commit suicide by cop. When you watch the video after the incident, when the officer is confronting him, he repeatedly tries to pull out his cell phone or his wallet and put it in a gun position. You see him do that a few times. He's trying to goat the officer into shooting him, but as soon as the officer realized that he didn't have a weapon and pulled out non-lethal force, the guy just buckled and was arrested. But that guy was, I guess they call them incels, involuntary celibate or something like that. It's
yeah,
a really strange group online of uh, people that can't get laid. It's
yeah,
one
yeah,
of the
yeah.
stranger parts of the internet, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
no, look at this point. Look at this point. Do you know, see that, Charles? Shane?
yeah, yeah,
He's right. No, Shane's right about this. Because we looked into the numbers, Charles,
yeah,
and right now the immigration people coming in, their taxation negative to the tune of 30 billion plus. That means they're consuming everyone more services than taxes they pay. Can you believe that, everyone? Taxation negative. That's right. And Ryan, Shane's right. The Canadian, the hardworking Canadian, is paying for all these people.
yeah.
It doesn't make sense. That's why we say the majority of Canadians do not benefit. Yes, we agree with you, Loretta. The welfare has to be looked at closely. Under our immigration policy, no one would receive welfare handouts for at least 5 years. You come to this country, you make a go of it. Don't come here and exploit our generosity. That's our policy. So that would do a lot to deal with illegal migration. Not to mention deporting any illegal migrants crossing the U.S. border and shutting down the sanctuary cities. There's at least 7 in Canada right now. They need to be shut down. And look at Matt. Look what he's saying.
Well, this is where I'm talking about when it comes to alternative media, and sort of. I think people are looking for other ways to absorb the information and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
gonna have to turn to stuff like social media, uh, YouTube, live streams, stuff like this. So
yeah, yeah. We're gonna get louder and louder, Matt. And there's gonna be no backing down. And um, the good news, Matt, is the media is somewhat stupid, eh? Because um, they give us all this nationwide coverage when they're attacking us, but that's only helping us. So, all we can do is keep speaking and keep having a strong voice and being active, and the word will spread. Uh, as far as we're concerned, we've won the battle of ideas. We've won the battle of vision. Our challenge is just to communicate our ideas to the Canadian people, Charles.
yeah,
And, I'm going to go back to this comment here. Um, I think it's Shane here. Hats off to Shane here. Um, he loves Trump. He loves President Trump, and hats off to you. He's vilified in our media. He's vilified by the government, and that's good that Shane can think for himself, right?
well, it's certain. Like I called Trump's win the day that the DNC went with Hillary. Like I think
Right,
that
right, right.
it was like this is the very same day. It was just like, oh, they got rid of Bernie. Well, Trump's going to win, just hands down. And it's been interesting to watch him shake things up. Like, I mean, I can't say that I agree with all of his policies, but I'll
Yeah,
agree with everybody's policies. So, but yeah, I don't think that they ever expected him to win. And now that
yeah.
he is in power, like it's just very fascinating to like it's turned the United States into a bit of a reality TV show, I dare say.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Um, Loretta says the first thing is to stop sanctuary cities 100%. Um, Imagine that, Loretta. Wouldn't that create a controversy in this country, eh? If someone had the fortitude, Charles,
Yeah.
to crack down on these sanctuary cities that are violating our laws. They're harboring illegal migrants. They're breaking our laws outright. Wouldn't that
Yeah.
be a day? That's in our policies, Loretta, and wouldn't that be a great day? Well, thanks, Ryan, for joining us. And, we did our best to answer your questions. And I'm sorry, we don't hate all Muslims. And we will never hate all Muslims as a party. And we will go out our way to support radical. We will go out our way to support reformist Muslims. And we want this illegal migration mess shut down. And we shared our solutions with you. And we think they're fairly comprehensive and very direct. But don't get fooled. Legal migration is only one of the immigration issues. The bigger issue is the mass immigration that is going on, and this is it's going to be up to 350,000 a year, and that's not including legal migrants. So that's a way bigger issue that we got to deal with as well. Yeah, it's true, Ryan. We're attacked in the media. CBC did a hit piece on me, 3 minute. Um, it is what it is. That's why we support independent media, independent bloggers. Charles,
Yeah.
uh, I'm actually going to do an interview next week with an independent group from Vancouver, BC, and we will go out of our way to support independent journalists in this country, and that's what we got to do. But fortunately, the youth, Charles, you can speak to this. A lot of them are going to independent sources, aren't they?
Oh yeah. No, it's uh, I've got a whole laundry list of like various uh, YouTube channels and stuff like that. That some of which are Canadian, like Roaming Millennial. My name is Josephine. I
Yeah.
think those are both girls out of. I think my name is Josephine is out of Toronto. Roaming Millennial is out of Montreal. Uh, Armored Skeptic. Then there's other ones like Dave Cullen, Bering, even like people like Joe Rogan, Dave Rubin. Like that's the kind of people that I generally listen to and follow because like they're bringing more to the table and like actually sitting down and having conversations or talking about stuff that the MSM won't talk about.
Yeah, look what Loretta says. She says Ryan doesn't understand there's a huge difference between Islam and a Muslim, right? You know, that's a no-brainer to you, isn't it, Charles?
As I said, I'm not big on Islamism,
But
but
you're not going to hate all Muslims, right?
no, no,
No, no, of course not. So that's just the way it is. And like I said, we're going to go out of our way to support reformists. And he's saying here, Shane, do Canadians even still watch CBC? It's a good question, but there must be a lot of the left watching it, Shane. But I'll tell you this: we will sell it to the highest bidder, and our policy will save the Canadian taxpayer 10 billion over 10 years. This propaganda machine, and that's all it is state propaganda. Everyone needs to be shut down. It's serving the political cronies in Ottawa. It's serving the corporate globalists. It does not serve the Canadian people. It's not honest. It's spinning all the time, and same with the major networks. So that's the truth.
Are you fellows critical of Mr. Trudeau? Yes.
Yeah. Of course, we're critical of Trudeau, Nancy, but we realize he's just one person, part of the establishment globalist agenda. He is replaceable, Nancy. He's a globalist puppet. They'll just put a new puppet in place. Once enough people get sick of him, they'll just put a new puppet to replace him. That's it. There's a deep state behind him. There's establishment behind him. You know, as Charles said earlier, he's just a drama teacher. He's there to distract us. But if anyone thinks this is all Trudeau, you're sadly mistaken. Charles, you're giving that guy way too much credit.
Yeah.
And what about this? Do you know much about what Matt's saying there?
Well, I think the thought is that a lot of the people that are on welfare that will abuse the money that they get to spend it on drugs. Loretta says after that it can't do drug testing for welfare once it becomes legal. Well, it's only marijuana that is on the table for becoming legal. So, but then they'll be able to grow that in the ground.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
But, all the other drugs, recreational drugs, definitely. Which I don't see.
It's pretty scary, though, Matt. Matt, this is pretty scary, Charles.
Yeah,
because you're giving. It just shows where this country's going. If you're getting something from the government, then they can control you, right?
Yeah,
they can test you, and that's why we need small, efficient government. This is going in the wrong direction, Matt. This is the control of big government and of the globalist agenda. We don't want that, Matt. We want small, efficient government. We need to get it out of people's lives. We want it more in people's lives. Hey, Charles? What are they going to test next?
Right? Probably thought crime.
Yeah. So that's a dangerous precedent there.
Is Trudeau similar or opposite of his good father? Well, I wasn't alive when...
Well, I think Nancy, he's pushing the same agenda as Pierre Trudeau. That's all you need to know. He's just at the other end of the spectrum. So when Trudeau came in the 60s, he laid the foundation for this globalist framework that we have. And thanks to all the successive governments, we're now in what Trudeau calls a post-national state, where he says he doesn't know what our identity is, our values, our heritage. So he's just an extension of Pierre Trudeau, Nancy, in my opinion.
Does Great Britain have a heavy influence on Canadian policy?
There's definitely an overlap, Nancy, with the establishment in Britain. You can see what they're doing to free speech with Tommy Robinson. You can see what they're doing to anyone who speaks up against the status quo. So we don't know how much influence it is, but there's definitely a parallel to what's going on in Britain and what's happening here. Charles?
Yeah.
It's very similar.
Another guy, Marcus Meekin, goes by Count Dankula. They strung him through 2 years of court for making a joke online that no one was actually offended by it. The police were actually just sort of looking to go after him. And at the end of these 2 years of litigations and everything, the court just fined him £800. He was facing up to over a year in jail or something like that for making a joke online. It's just
So let's look at this. This young Trudeau's worth. He's bluntly being in the agenda with no accountability. Yeah, it's just this system, Loretta, that's allowing it. This is the system in place, and but he is just following this globalist agenda, this post-national agenda, turning us into a globalist village. He's definitely not acting alone. There's a Privy Council which shadows him. There's a deep state, which is part of that is the mainstream media. Part of that is the educational institutions in this country. the RCMP. It's all connected. Loretta, what's going on? Do not give this drama teacher too much credit. He's just following the orders of the globalist dictates. That's the truth.
I will give him one thing. He does have great dance choreography.
Does that really matter? Oh my God! And look at Shane. Read this, Shane. Shane is right.
The libtards and the conservatives are the same. Libtards do change fast, and the conservatives use the frog in the pot method. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, look that up. What Shane says, but he gets it. Shane gets what's going on. You know, as far as we're concerned, there's a 4-party conglomerate. Conglomerate means different entities that are part of the same overall entity.
Oh yeah, no, it's
so that's what's going on. It doesn't. But fortunately, a lot of people are waking up to this. And I want to Bruce here read this one.
Fair estimate.
Right here, Daddy Trudeau gave us multicultures to buy votes, and little Trudeau is using it to destroy the country.
Seriously, seems to be going that way.
Yeah, it seems to be going that way. So we're going to expose even more and more, everyone. You are not alone, and we want to thank everyone for joining us here. It's great to hear what you're thinking. And Loretta says Pierre Trudeau backed off because a referendum was being called. Yeah, they don't want any accountability by the Canadian people. That's an interesting question here. Are some Canadians in favor of building a wall in areas of under-patrolled, like our U.S. states, bordering Canada in wilderness areas? Yeah, there must be some people, Nancy, but, the Canadian-U.S. border, there's so much of it that is not passable. There's so many natural barriers, and but
I love going out camping, but I wouldn't want to have to trek through the Rockies unprepared.
But Nancy, we don't need a wall. We need to deal with our issues in our country. We need to make sure new immigrants to our country don't have access to our welfare and healthcare system. When they come here, they make a goal of it. They don't come here to exploit us. That's why they're coming here, to exploit what we're offering. We need to deal with that, and that would deal with illegal migration. Bruce says here, Charles, globalism is the enemy of governments. Force it on the people.
Well,
governments force it on the people.
I would say there's a certain amount of governments having to force things on the people, globalism or not, but the globalist agenda is much more like Octopus Inc. It makes me think of like Spectre, and like Brussels is sitting at the top there petting a white cat in this dark, shady room. Like it's there's certainly a cabal going on. That
Loretta, you're right. What's the border of Manitoba, Quebec is obscene. That has to be dealt with, and we have to get the right legislation in place, and then put enough manpower to deal with it. But like I said, if we eliminate the incentives for all these illegal migrants to come here, that's going to do a lot to deal with illegal migration. So we got to address our internal issues. We can secure those borders more. We got to deal with the Safe Third Country Act, and this is completely fixable. What's going on? And Bruce says remote areas in the U.S. use technology to monitor the border, such as motion detection. Yeah, of course. And let's not get too worked up about this issue. We need to deal with the internal issues. We can manage this issue. We can deal with this issue. Look here.
So freedom of speech, like I'm a freedom of speech absolutist.
No.
I think that the cake maker had their right to refuse, like just as freedom. How long before the country splits? Well, tribalism is a huge problem that's I'm seeing start to rise. Like it's groups splintering off into their own factions. Like
Yeah.
see it with like social justice, and you see it with politics. Like it's definitely sort of like snowballing more and more these days. And so yeah, that's a very good point.
You see Matt's comment there, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I still think it's within the cake maker's rights to refuse.
Of course. Yeah.
Like, but that's freedom of speech. It's just sort of like people can yell at me and call me a white supremacist or something like that, and I'll defend. I know I'm not a white supremacist, and I'll defend their right to yell at me and say something like that.
Exactly. Matt's bang on. In a free society, you tolerate those you don't agree with their speech, but we have the reverse going on.
Yeah.
So we just got to keep battling that issue, Matt, and not back down, and keep speaking loudly. We can overcome that, Charles.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I truly envy the United States First Amendment. Like, I wish that we had the same up here. I mean, like that would be another example of like some of the tactics that like the sensationalism does. Is the couple went there knowing the guy's religious views and demanded that he make the cake, and when he refused, they turned it into a big public spectacle.
Yep. Loretta's right. She said what you said.
Yeah.
It's his business. It's his right to decide who he wants to serve. And how do you feel about? Did you hear about the religious ruling?
Which one?
They're saying the Trinity Western University, which is a Christian-based university, the bar associations in Nova Scotia and BC and other places said they won't accept their law students to be administered to practice law.
Okay, that's
and actually, it was the Supreme Court that ruled on it and said that because of their Christian views towards homosexuals, that they shouldn't be allowed to practice law.
Just dropped you there.
Yeah. So that's something we're going to talk about on the 25th with Professor Deshane. But that's a big issue, Charles.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to weaken Christianity and keep them out. Also, keep them out of legal practice.
Well, let's see, like why they should, unless they're like, how are they bringing like sort of pushing a Christian agenda, like in a court of law? I mean, like. Isn't there a separation? Like as soon as you step into that courthouse, it's an entirely different set of rules. Like it's just, you're under the court's rules, not like shouldn't religion be not a factor in that?
Yeah, and look at here, Calgary has an Islamic judge, so there's a double standard there.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point, Loretta. I want to get to Nancy here. She says it seems our new U.S. government cabinet in Washington has put Canada into a political tailspin.
Well, that's like the whole sort of America going its own way. It's like everything seemed to be great between Trump and Trudeau at first, but now that Trump is, sort of doing his own thing, Trudeau looks like a deer caught in the headlights. He doesn't know what to do with it.
Yep. Yeah, good point. And Nancy, they're just the problem with Canada right now. We have a lot of socialism, a lot of welfare in our systems, and Trump is exposing our weakness. And what's happening with the trade, these big parties are tied to big industry lobbyists like dairy. And Trump was right. The dairy lobby has got the government putting 270% tariffs on dairy products from the US and up to 300%. And Trump is just exposing that. And that's why he called Trudeau dishonest and he called him weak. And it's unfortunate, but we knew this was going to happen, Nancy. We knew the U.S. system, which is robustly capitalist, will expose the utter weakness of our socialism up here. And that's what's going on. And, there's anything but free trade going on, everyone. These industry lobbyists are controlling these big parties, and they're putting all kinds of protections in. Yes, 100%. Christina, we believe in separation of church and state. I'm glad you brought up this issue. I've been battling with the left on Twitter recently. We do support separation of church and state, but at the same time, we recognize the Christian heritage of our country. It's in our institutions. It's in our laws. It's in the way our government functions. It's in our educational systems. We believe that heritage should not be denied. It's something that we need to acknowledge. Yeah, look at this,
Yeah.
Charles. Isn't it crazy, eh? Christianity is now being viewed as neo-Nazism because they choose to practice and force their belief. 100%, Matt, and that's part of our heritage as a country, and it'd be suicide on our part as Canadians to reject our heritage. That heritage is part of who we are as people, and that's something we stand by. We acknowledge that heritage. Not everyone is a Christian in our party, but we still acknowledge that heritage. And sure, it's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. And it's done a lot of good for this country. And there's some good values in the Christian ethic of hard work, supporting the family union, and other things like that. So that's something we stand by. And Linda's right, eh? She said yes. Yes, socialist. And that's exactly what's going on. Trump is exposing the socialist welfare, and there's lots of corporate welfare in our country, everyone. There's over 500 companies receiving handouts of our tax dollars. So Trump is just exposing that. And but in the long run, we're going to be better off as a country. We need to deal with these inefficiencies in our country. And we knew that long before he was elected, Charles. You could see it coming, right?
Sorry, I was just trying to catch up on the chat. Steel tariff.
Yeah, that's fine. The steel tariff would hurt American steel more than Canadian U.S. steel. Yeah, and we'll see what Trump does. We believe in having fair, balanced trade with the U.S., Loretta, and having good relations with our most important ally and friend and most significant trading partner. This does not have to be happening. But unfortunately, the Liberals, the federal government, is tied to these industry lobbyists, and they probably get a lot of money from these lobbyists, and that's what's going on. The Canadian people will be hurting in the long run. Yeah, that's great, Loretta. We welcome that, and we think it's horrific, these attacks on Christianity. And they're completely one-sided. And we Our heritage is part of who we are as people. We shouldn't be rejecting that. And Michael David, he's right. The civil government was created out of Christian churches in the colonies. And that's the honest truth. Why would we reject that? Sure, there's issues in the past with First Nations, residential schools, and whatever, but there was a lot of good that came out of Christianity in this country. And it's part of who we are as a people, and we're not going to reject that.
Why do you think this multiculturalism and mass immigration only happens to white countries?
Oh, where do you see that?
8 p.m. Shane Togel.
You see what Michael David's saying?
Yeah. But
So
Shane Tobel says, why do you think this multicultural and mass immigration only happens to white countries? Still can't figure this out, and I'm for the Second Amendment, rogue government, and invasion. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what you mean by the last part of the Second Amendment, rogue government, and invasion, but why do you think this multicultural mass immigration only happened to white countries? Well, take a look at the Western world. Predominantly white first world countries. So that's why it's only happening to white countries. I mean, I don't see mass immigration to South Africa right now. More like an exodus.
Well, yeah, who wants to go there? Right? So, plus it's the globalist agenda. It's all these people are coming in, and there's commercial interests that are benefiting everyone, and also it's dividing us and undermining the West. We would argue it's a new world order, globalist agenda. Oh, there's Matt.
Right on. More of the Maritimes.
Oh, that's fantastic, Matt. Yeah, we're going to do some major rallies. We really we came face to face with the radical left. That's in the Maritimes, and but at the same time, we connected with the silent majority in the Maritimes, and which was great. And as I mentioned, Matt, we're having a meeting in a couple of weeks. We hope you can attend. It's outside of Halifax, so be sure to attend that meeting. And we got some big events coming up in the Maritimes. We're planning for September and October. So that's fantastic. Please send us an email. Get on our email list. Go to our homepage. There's a sign-up form there, and I can put you in contact with Adrian, our Maritime Regional Coordinator. So please get sign up to the party so I can put you in contact with the right people. Yeah, it's unbelievable what the people in the Maritimes are going through.
Well, I'd say that the silent majority that you talk about, I was one of the silent majority. It reached far outside of the Maritimes. Here we are on the opposite side of the country, and if it wasn't for that incident in Halifax, then I probably still wouldn't. As I said, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Yep. Yeah, as long as we have access, Loretta, to those naval docks, we would just have to make sure we have access. But that's coming up, everyone. Do you want to add anything else, Charles? I'm going to have to close this down tonight.
I could just finish up with that one very important thought. Now that the show is over and we've jointly exercised our constitutional rights, we'd like to leave you with one very important thought. Sometime in the future, you may have the opportunity to serve as a juror in a censorship case or a so-called obscenity case. It'd be wise to remember the same people that would stop you from listening to a podcast like this may be back next year to complain about a book or even a TV program. If you can be told what you can see or read, then it follows that you can be told what to say or think. Defend your constitutionally protected rights. No one else will do it for you. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, Matt. I can't make a comment here, but info at nationalcitizensalliance.ca. And that's all one word. Info at nationalcitizens with an S, alliance.ca. Send us an email, and I'll put you in contact with Adrian. You'll have to come to that meeting. And I just want to, Linda, she's saying there are very few mosques in Ireland.
I honestly don't know enough about what's going
Yeah,
on in
I don't
Ireland.
know. If you could share more information on that, Linda, that would be appreciative. And look at this, everyone. Shane. Change starts from the bottom up, not from the top down. Canadians need some hard time change. Won't happen until Canadians are on the knees with the guns to our head. Remember, um, good time make weak man, hard time make for strong man. Yeah, Shane gets it. He's on board. Great stuff, Shane. We totally resonate with what you're saying. Thanks for the show, Shane. Thank you very much. God bless you, Michael. Thank you for sharing your input. And I want to stress everyone, next Monday, it's going to be an early show, but we're going to have Professor Deshane on, and we're going to dig deep into this globalist agenda. The show is going to be starting it's going to start at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a little early, but we're trying to accommodate Professor Deshane, who lives in the Maritimes. But we're going to dig deep into the globalists. So join us next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's going to be a great show next week. Thank you. Thank you everyone for the comments tonight. We probably missed some people, but we wanted to hear what Charles had to say tonight. And this is the IRA fault for their believers. Canada needs to do the same. Excellent stuff. So you see that in Ireland, Charles?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with the IRA.
Yeah. So we totally resonate with what you're saying, Matt. We need to step up and fight for what we value, what we believe for our country. If we don't, we're going to lose it. It's as simple as that. At the NCA, we've engaged this fight, and we encourage other people to join us. This is a fight over our future of this country, and we believe the ideas, the vision is on our side without question. It's just a matter of communicating our ideas and vision. But this globalist agenda is complete insanity. Complete insanity to the majority of Canadians. It only benefits select commercial interests and establishment parties. That's
I would
it.
say that we live in an era of diversion, and we're currently in the midst of a huge culture war.
Yeah. Yeah, he's saying nonviolence. Yeah, of course, Matt. We don't
I was
want.
going to say it was like the IRA had some pretty violent tactics.
We hope it never comes to that, Matt. That's why we formed the NCA. We don't want it ever to come to that. But, we can't control history, what's going to happen. But we obviously don't wish that upon the Canadian people.
Well, if you forget
thank you,
history,
Michael.
You're doomed to repeat it,
Yeah. But that next show next week, Charles, is going to be fantastic too. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight, to represent youth Canadians. And, you're a bright Canadian. And you must be an inspiration to other youth that you were able to get through all this manipulation, all this deception, because it's not easy. When you're inundated, you're in the schools and it's controlling you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. There's just one last comment, Geordie Jordan. Yeah. Excellent point on the border. Yeah, and there's so many natural barriers, Jordy, and we're convinced if we take away all these welfare and healthcare access to these people coming here, you know, they're not going to want to come here. And we have in our immigration policy, it takes 10 years to become a citizen. If we take all those incentives away, why would they want to come here? God bless you all, Canadians, and good night. Thank you, Shane. You were fantastic tonight. Man, you really get it, doesn't he? This guy,
Oh yeah.
great stuff. He gets it, and please share your message, Shane. We need a lot more Canadians like you. 100%, great stuff. And we've been going a while. I guess we'll close it off. I don't. I could go here all night. I love the comments, but we're going to be going next Monday,
Well, I'll
and
see you guys in the chat.
so that's going to be a good one. But this is a great opportunity to hear other Canadians
Yeah.
what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and that's why we do these Q&As, Charles.
Yeah.
Is to connect with Canadian people and hear what they're saying. But Charles is going to be involved with us in the party, and we're going to give him other opportunities to speak what he's seeing as a youth Canadian, but also a youth member of the party. And if you're a youth out there, please join us. Your voice does matter. We care about you. We care about your future, and you are our future if you're a youth Canadian. So please consider joining the NCA. We will embrace you as a Canadian, and like I said, your voice matters. We are listening. Okay, I'm gonna wish you a good night, Charles. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good one. Thank you.
Okay.